way back in the midst of time, long before Stonehenge in England and centuries before the Egyptian Great Pyramid of Giza was completed on the banks of the Nile, stood an ancient mystical ground on a small western portion of a European island. Inhabited by mankind for 29,000 years, and as the Neolithic Age came to an end, the ancient people of this land built mighty cromlechs, the Olden Brythonic word for megalithic monuments. After the last ice age, the Celts of Europe made this segment of the island their home. It was a land of druids and bards, a land where poets and minstrels rejoiced.
Well, the first immigrants really, they're pioneers, they're founders. They are religiously persecuted, so they're coming here for different reasons. The second wave of Welsh immigrants really come for economic reasons, but it was a skill that they had in particular for northeastern Pennsylvania because of the tremendous amount of coal that people were finding. You had the Connecticut Yankees, very first people to come to northeastern Pennsylvania, but they came as farmers. They were looking for land to cultivate. Connecticut at this time is just overcrowded, so they come over the Hudson through what we call the Pocono Mountains today, into the Wyoming Valley, and built some magnificent farms. Well, a generation, 2 generations later, they discover coal. And they really didn't have the Yankee ingenuity to get the coal, extract the coal from the ground. So what did? They went to the world's best coal miners, the Welsh, who had experience in extracting anthracite, and brought them over here. So you start to see a tremendous upswing in the 1840s with Welsh immigrants, also other immigrants that had experiences in coal mining, technical people, engineers, fire bosses. And then by the time the Civil War ends, you have a tremendous amount of immigration coming into the area.
The promise of better pay and better conditions here brought them here in the 1840s. And they were settled all throughout northeastern Pennsylvania and somewhat to the south, because there were the Welsh, the slate quarries beyond the mountains in the Poconos, and there were great, North Welsh came there, and they were all skilled workers, so they were welcome and they were needed. In fact, it was Welsh participation that enabled the industry to expand to where many other peoples came here. In the 1830s, up till that time, I should say that the Welsh were as important, or even may important, to the iron and steel industry as they were to coal mining and quarrying. At that time, up until the 1830s, iron was smelted mostly by charcoal made from hardwood trees. Well, with the advent of the railroads, there was a great strain on the hardwood forest because the railroads used hardwood in the fires of their steam locomotives, and they also use it for cross ties, millions and millions of cross ties. So the source of charcoal was in danger of petering out. Solomon Roberts, a nephew of Josiah White, was in Wales visiting cousins, and also there for business reasons. And he heard that at the Ynyscudwen Iron Works in Ystrad Gunlais, Wales, that they were using anthracite successfully to smelt iron and steel. George Crane was the iron master, and his very resourceful furnace man, David Thomas. David Thomas had gone to Scotland to learn the hot blast method of smelting from James Beaumont Nielsen. The Scots are a very, very inventive people. And he learned how to apply it to the smelting of iron and steel with anthracite. And Josiah White inveigled David Thomas and Crane into coming to this country, and they established the anthracite method of smelting iron and coal, or iron and steel in this country, which led to a huge expansion in the need for demand for anthracite and a huge expansion in the anthracite industry, which made it possible for, in fact, necessary for thousands and thousands of people to come here from Europe.
The Eisteddfod is a throne or chair conferred as a matter of honor for an attendant to a prince or king, and we find references to chairs being provided in the laws of Hywel Dda for poets to sit at the court, but we find references to earlier courts of kings of what was then Roman Britain, which is the source of the Welsh that we know today, and their kings too had court poets who were in charge of what we might today think of as communications and celebrations, always focusing on honoring the king, sometimes satirized by the writers of that early period. I'm thinking about the 6th century. By the age of Hywel Dda, that king is endeavoring to coordinate the traditions relating to poets in the courts, but the key thing is that the poets had a place of honor in the court of the king.
One of the most interesting things I think about Danville, Pennsylvania, is that when I first visited Danville, Pennsylvania in, I believe it was 1992, I already knew about Danville, Pennsylvania. I already knew of Danville's existence and the importance of Danville to the Welsh. And many people in Danville who are living here now do not know about Wales or the importance of the valleys to their history, which was, to me, extraordinary. We think of Welsh immigration into Pennsylvania in terms of Scranton and Wilkes-Barre, in terms of anthracite, and in terms of the Slate Belt region and Bangor, in places like that. But Danville has a huge contribution. There were many, many folk from Wales who came to Danville for one reason, and that is the iron industry. As you know, I'm sure, David Thomas figured out how to smelt iron using anthracite in Catasauqua, and the iron industry was what made Danville its name, and what gave Danville its name, and why Danville was so very, very important. It wasn't very long before Welshmen were coming to Danville in droves to work in the iron mills here in Danville, especially after the first T-rails were rolled here at the big mill. I believe that was 1831. After that, or is it 1841? After that, Welshmen were coming absolutely in their droves to Danville to work in the iron mines. There is a small part of Danville, outside Danville, where the iron mines once were, that was called Welsh Town. We are almost on the base of Welsh Hill in Danville, as it was called. And Welshmen came here predominantly from the valleys, predominantly from Merthyr Tydfil and from Blaenavon, to work in the iron mills here, and found for them Danville gave them a future.